Hey, everybody, and welcome back
Hi,
to
guys.
Taste the Trail. I'm Spencer Whelan with,
I'm Sarah Whelan.
and we are on our third night of
Yes.
19 different distillery tours around the Texas
That's
Whiskey
right.
Trail. We got a few people already joining into the live stream, so thank you guys for joining on already. We're really pleased tonight to have one of our newer members on the Texas Whiskey Trail, and in Fort Worth from Blackland Distilling. Now, we have gone to Blackland.
Yes.
And it is, we talk about this all the time, but it's one of our favorite things about the Texas Whiskey Trail is that every single place feels different.
Yeah.
And unique, and they all have a different tone and vibe to them. And this place is definitely one of the more unique. It's urban scale distillery that has a lot of amazing elements to it, both from an experience when you're there and the stills themselves and everything is unique. So
it's stunning.
Yeah.
I really, really beautiful. And the tasting room is gorgeous. It's a super fun place to be. Like, I think it would be a really great experience. I really want to go back sometime, like at night when other people are there too. And, like, get the whole experience. It's like Mad Men on steroids. Like, even better.
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. So you may have just heard him a little bit in the background, but let's go ahead and introduce our guest tonight. Founder of Blackland Distilling, Markus Kypreos. Markus, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for joining us tonight. And before we get too deep into talking about whiskey and everything, I want to talk for a second about what you're doing on the hand sanitizer front, because you were early on this. You guys have done a lot very recently. I believe you guys are even shutting down right now so while you get more materials in-house. Talk a little bit about what it's been like the past 2 weeks.
It's been crazy. I think it was 9 days ago, we stopped production of alcohol and focused full-time on hand sanitizer. And so the reality of the situation is, for us and for every other city out there, there's just not enough hand sanitizer. And even if we were the only ones making it in Fort Worth alone, we couldn't meet the demand. And that's really the frustrating part, is that you have hospitals and shelters and food banks and first responders and everyone down the line who are all worthy and who all need hand sanitizer and who you want to give it to.
Right.
And there's just not enough. And so I'm really happy with the staff and all of my employees who have stepped up to do it. But at the same time, I haven't enjoyed it as much as making alcohol in that sense, because I feel really bad. And we've sort of had to implement the bread policy at the grocery store, where it's just like, we want to allocate as much as we can out into the community. And so we're limiting to like individual bottles for people. And then we try and we put gallon size for bigger organizations. But if you looked at my list of requests and everyone who needs it, my inbox is the most full it's ever been.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate everything that you're doing. This is all part of what we're calling our Still Strong TX efforts, so that we can keep the distillery industry, keeping Texas strong and healthy. We talked about this a few different times, but I never would have guessed, one, that when we started the association and the trail, that we would be considered an essential business during a time of crisis.
Duh.
Right? We would literally be saving lives with the distillation practices that have been developed in this state over the past 10 years, Yeah.
I'm at the end of the day, I'll look back at this. I'm sure all of us will look back at this as a special time, that when we were able to step up, because I think a lot of distilleries are doing all they can right now. And I think people really appreciate it in the community. A lot of other businesses can't. So in that regard, I am happy that we can help. I just like everyone else, I wish we could help more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we've been dealing with a lot of things, from dealing with the FDA to the TTB and all these different, alphabet soup of agencies. You've been dealing with a little bit of that too. And your background is actually in culinary. In the culinary world, so you have a lot of food science knowledge. What what has this been like trying to navigate this world of different regulations?
Yeah, well, that, and of course, I was a lawyer before that too, right?
Oh yeah.
So,
Yeah,
I
just
think it's
things.
yeah. I just throw that out just because
Yeah.
all of the bureaucracy and I think my frustration has just been the way that the FDA kind of just moves the ball all the time in terms of not just the labeling and the registering, and then we have the different percentages for ABV, and then the denaturing on the GNS and what you have to do. And I don't think making GNS is that difficult. I think all of the distilleries can sit down and figure it out, and the ingredients are pretty straightforward. And WHO issued that really great hand guide on how to make it. But the bureaucracy has been a problem, and then the logistics have been a problem. And just okay, yeah, you can figure out how to make hand sanitizer, but then you need bottles, then you need tops, then you need labels, then you need distribution, and then you've got to stop everything that you're doing to make it. So when you put all of that together and just you have to stop and pivot like that, that's really the big picture crazy part of all of it, right?
Yeah, and not only do you have to stop and pivot, but you also have to worry about tax liability if you don't denature it perfectly, or if you don't denature it, you have to then pay taxes on it at about $5 per gallon at that high proof.
Right. Another one of the many issues I'm sure I didn't bring up. So yeah, that's a good point. There's just a lot of moving pieces. And by the way, the bigger issue I always say too, especially for the whiskey, because we make vodka, gin, bourbon, and rye. So we have a lot of GNS just in the distillery, whereas a lot, especially the bigger whiskey distilleries, they don't have GNS sitting around anywhere. And then the other thing I think about them is if you're not making vodka or gin and you don't have this just GNS around, why do you even want to stop? Like everything you're making today is for 4 to 6 years down the road, right? And so why are you going to stop your entire operation and the game plan that you've put in place for the long term for a couple of weeks right now? So those are the guys that I'm just like, I get it. I absolutely get why you're still making whiskey. And I think if I just made whiskey, I might not have made hand sanitizer, to be honest with you. But because we had the vodka and the gin, we do everything. We do those from grain to glass, and we had the type of stills that we have too, which are sort of fully automated and can crank it out and make really clean alcohol, then it just made a lot of sense for us to do it.
Yeah. Well, again, thank you for what you're doing. For those of you out there, if you see on the screen, you can go to TexasWhiskeyTrailStore.com. You can buy one of our Still Strong TX t-shirts. They're being printed now for starting delivery, I think, next week.
Cool.
Actually, breaking news. Oh, I don't think I haven't told him this.
We haven't seen each other until just now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, they came in early.
Oh, they did?
Yeah. So Alicia, who is our fulfillment coordinator, I think there's something else to her title too, and
I'm just calling her trail coordinator because she
does
so
all
much.
the things. Alicia keeps us running.
Love you,
what
Alicia.
Alicia does. But yeah, no, she got them today, and she's gonna tomorrow start working on processing them and getting them out as soon as possible. So if you bought a shirt, you might actually get it a little bit earlier than you had anticipated.
Awesome. Well, so for those that are on, please do that. It will help us keep our efforts going and all the legal, not just legal, but all the regulatory stuff that we're dealing with. But that is not why we're doing the Taste the Trail. We're doing the Taste the Trail because we want to stop thinking about COVID for a second, spend a little bit more time focusing on whiskey. And, you know, I'm already seeing some comments in here. I knew this was going to happen, but Dale Woodkey says, "Is that your only t-shirt?" And I'm sure he's talking about this. Dale, the answer is, frankly, yeah, right now it is, because I have so few clothes that if I wore everything that I have in a rotation over 19 nights, you'd see the same things over and over again anyway.
Dale, I gave up a long time ago.
So I'm just doing the Steve Jobs thing and sticking on like 1 or 2 t-shirts and outfits, and then you guys can just deal. Yeah,
you and Steve.
yeah, exactly. Me and Steve Jobs. But he says he's got his shirt on too. So,
awesome.
So let's kind of go forward. So what we have here, we have your 2 products, 2 whiskey products currently. These are, and I should say, one of the rules for the association is that you make a certified Texas whiskey, either you're in process of making it, or it's in maturation.
You're making me nervous.
Oh.
These bottles, break these bottles.
These are like her favorite bottles.
Oh
they
my goodness,
mine too.
they're gorgeous.
Beautiful.
I love
Thank
them.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But you have a rye that looks like that, and you have your bourbon. And these are mostly sourced products. They have a little bit of your own product in there while you're in maturation on the rest of your items, correct?
That's right.
So
yeah, so it's about an 80-20 split.
Okay, 20% of your own bourbon.
Correct.
Okay, and the 80% is coming from, I can't remember where it was. Was it Wisconsin?
It's from a distillery in Minnesota called J. Carver. I just had a relationship with them, and they sold me barrels, and it's worked out really well.
Nice. Cool. Well, we would love to kind of go through this, and the conceit of this whole thing is that Sarah is new to whiskey relatively, like within the last 2 years or so, is when we really started trying whiskeys and trying to like them, right?
Yeah. And enjoying it neat.
That's right. That was a big deal.
Yes, it is.
But to this point, she's just been kind of like, it's good, it's bad, I like it, I don't like it.
Yeah.
It gives me heartburn or it doesn't.
Yeah, or I would be at events or something and people would start talking about like what they smell or whatever. And I'm like, I'm going to go over there. See y'all later. Like I just didn't even know where to start. So I just wouldn't participate. And I think that that's the case for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I don't think it has to be that. It's not been as scary as I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But.
So we're going to try something that the first night we kind of stumbled on, which was we have a rye and a bourbon. You don't know which one is which. It's not this one. But of these two, I just want to see if you can identify
by smell alone.
Just by smell alone, knowing that one's a bourbon. And we'll see what Marcus says.
Oh, I'm nervous. Okay.
This is the fun part where we just stare at each other while she's. Now, first thing, without making a final determination, do you notice a difference?
Yeah, okay. I can smell a difference, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
Do you have like? Can you give notes on like? Does one smell sharp, dull? One's more rounded, sweet.
All good questions.
Yeah. So this one smells fuller.
Mm-hmm.
Than this one. I don't know if I would. Yeah, maybe it's a little sweeter.
Remind us of the proof on these. Are they?
They're 83. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And this one, the sharp is a good. I don't know if I would have come up with that on my own if you hadn't said it. But it's a good description of it. Okay, so I would say bourbon rye.
You are right.
Oh,
good.
Hey.
There you go.
Yeah.
Not bad. Okay, so let's
I was just gonna say those are and I know that I make it and I know that I said it, but I think they're pretty different taste wise. I think, and the smell too, but you nailed it. I think you'll be able to tell quite a bit more when you taste it, obviously, just for the grains you're dealing with.
I mean, I think, the bourbon was the one that I thought smelled fuller.
Okay. And
I think I probably leaned with this being the bourbon because it had I felt like it smelled a little sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually find bourbons to be sweeter.
Yeah, I noticed on the rye, and I'd love to hear your opinion.
Drinking?
Oh, please do. Yes. I noticed on the rye that there's this. I mean, it's definitely a classic rye note, right? There's a classic kind of peppery, kind of a green peppercorn note to it. What notes do you usually self-identify as the guy that makes it? What do you notice from your rye?
Well, it's the 80% is a 100% rye. So it's what I always notice is just when I taste it. For me, rye has a really spicy forward, and I don't like to say in your face, but a little bit aggressive, which is typical of all the ryes that I taste. It's 80-90% rye. And the second thing that I taste, just because I'll go in now and my palate is shot from tasting barrels, is the oak, like the wood. Like that's all I really ever pay attention to now. And so I would say on this rye, for me personally, and same with the bourbon, and I think I told you this, they're pretty easy to drink, bourbon and rye. These are not, if there's a criticism of them, these are not the super, 90 to 100 proof to even barrel cast, like forward, whatever forward that dominates the palate. These are pretty diverse, easy to drink, both of them.
I'd agree. I think it's interesting that you talk about the rye being usually spicy, and I hear people describe it that way all the time. Rye. I really like rye, so I've never been able to reconcile those two things because I don't like when it comes to food and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I do not like spice at all. Like it burns, it physically hurts my tongue, so I don't enjoy eating it. I like flavorful things, but not like really spicy. And so I don't usually lean that way. Like that's not the stuff I'm usually interested in. It's usually the sweeter stuff, but I've really liked rye. So
see, I wonder, and Markus, I'd be curious about your opinion on it, but as a culinary professional, like when you usually have spicy things, there's a spicy flavor, but then there's also the capsaicin, which burns, right?
Yeah. So when I say spice, I don't mean heat. I mean more like pepper or more of the tingle, because that's really more what I feel with the grain. It's just tasting of the grain is a certain spiciness. And so I taste it more, to your point, on the aftertaste and then, excuse me, in the back of my mouth. And so sometimes it's hard to distinguish between the finish of the alcohol and the spice that's there. But if you're looking for it and you know that it's there, then you'll pick it up every time.
Okay.
That's a really good way to describe it.
Well, and it's probably too, like, because I have not been overly thinking when I'm drinking the whiskey beyond whether I like it or not. It's a pretty I think I was a couple ryes in before you're like, you really like rye. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now
that's the other problem is also when you drink a couple and then you're past it and you can't taste it anymore, right? Like you have to go right at the beginning. I've been saving up all day just so I can taste some of this stuff too.
Yeah. Awesome.
It looks like we have Jose Martinez in our comments here.
Hey, hi.
So hi, Jose. If you're drinking with us tonight and you have a bottle of Blackland, first of all, Markus, why don't you tell them where they can find it if you can't go to the distillery right now, and you can't leave your house? Where could you possibly order from that has curbside or delivery? Yeah, so we're primarily in DFW and Houston, which is just killer for everyone else in Central Texas, but we're getting there. And then, so we're in like Specs and Goody Goody and Total Wine, and they have delivery. But there's also a place called reservebar.com, and you can order our stuff for delivery there anywhere in Texas, not outside the state, but anywhere in Texas. So that's your best bet right now until I think in the next couple months we've been talking and we'll probably be in Austin and San Antonio. I mean, I say that, I don't know what's going to happen now, but that's pretty much where we're going. We've only been on liquor store shelves since end of September, early October. So we're moving pretty quickly. It's just, it takes time to get to every place.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It looks like, Dale said I tried to find some at Specs.
Soon, Dale. Soon. I promise it'll be there.
Now, Markus, we kind of have something a little bit in common. Your wife is from the Pacific Northwest, right?
Yes, she's from Spokane, Washington.
Yeah. And so I grew up, I mean, I think most everyone who's watching this probably knows, but I grew up in the Seattle area. So it's very fun to meet a fellow Northwesterner because well, at least there used to be. I didn't used to meet very many people who were from that area down here, but it's growing like crazy, especially in Austin. But
for sure,
how did the two of you meet? I can't remember.
Oh, it's a crazy, convoluted story of how her best friend was engaged to my law school roommate, and somehow it just worked out that way.
Okay, I remember that. So, have you spent a lot of time in the Northwest?
I have. I've spent a lot of time in Spokane. I like Seattle.
It's northwest of here.
Spokane is not Seattle, that's for sure.
But I went to one of the schools I went to learn how to distill was in Gig Harbor at Heritage. They have a whiskey making school, and then that distillery is really blown up. They have the brown sugar bourbon, which is the BSB, which is everywhere now. And they opened another distillery in Oregon, so I see them all the time, and they're down here. They're really making a big push. And that's a good distillery in Gig Harbor.
So has that experience, kind of being in a different part of the country, influenced what you guys are doing there at Blackland?
No, I visit Spokane for the in-laws.
Gotcha. So how about your time in Gig Harbor?
Oh yeah, sorry. What I really like, Jason is the owner there. He was an attorney turned distiller, and he sort of approached it that way from a very type A perspective. And so I'm sure I took a lot from what he was doing, but he also does different whiskeys and a gin and a vodka. I find that there's you're either just doing whiskey, or you're just doing one thing, you're just doing vodka, or you're doing a lot, right? It's interesting. I always like to see the different distilleries and what their business plan is and what their marketing plan is and what they decide to do that way, because everyone's different.
Well, looks like we have another couple PNW folks.
Really?
From Matt, the Wazoo grad.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Except he also says he can't find anything up in Mountain Time, so wants to move back to Texas. And then, of course, Patrick. It's like I almost lived there already.
Yes, Patrick, come on down. Yeah. We all know you're going to be here.
This is a good question from Trey Kuntz. Markus, tell us about the Blackland name.
Yeah, so it's from the Blackland Prairie, which is one of the 7 ecoregions in Texas. And the Blackland Prairie runs just north of Fort Worth down to San Antonio. And it got its name from, there were hundreds of years ago, frequent wildfires that made the soil black and gray. And I like the idea of the charring of the land, because, essentially with the char on the barrels and how we age the whiskey. And I also liked that Blackland really could be anywhere. I grew up here in Fort Worth, and not a lot of people knew the Blackland Prairie or what it is, or the geographical connotation. So I just thought, Blackland sounds, I like the name. It could be anywhere.
Yeah.
And it kind of tips its hat to the tradition in whiskey about naming your distillery kind of around a geographical element of where your distillery is located, and get into that terroir literally in this case.
Right. And I, as someone who was born and raised in Fort Worth, I didn't really want to do Cowtown or something like that. And because of the way what we're doing and how we're distilling and the bottles, it doesn't really say Cowtown on it anyway, right?
Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah, visiting your distillery. In fact, I've seen the viewer count jump up here. I may actually run your video one more time if you don't mind, so that we can talk about your distillery.
Sure. Yeah.
People online can get a view of what this is. So this is about 25-second video montage of the distillery, your operation, and your amazing, beautiful tasting room.
Thanks.
Again, very, very cool. Very, very modern, sleek, elegant.
I like it.
A lot of cocktails going on there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the tasting room, the way we look at it or the way we approach it is quite simply as a marketing tool. So we do everything we can to kind of make it a special evening or time in when people come. So yeah, we make our own spirits, and we make our own bitters, and we make our own sherbets, and we freshly squeeze our juice every day and throw it away at night, because we want to have the best cocktails anywhere you can find. And yeah, that's probably my food background and probably my wine background. But it's also, if you can come in and you have a cocktail with our spirits and you're like, this is the best cocktail I've ever had, then I think, I don't want to say cheating, but it's sort of it's a way for us to get you to fall in love with our spirits and be a customer for life. So our margins maybe aren't the same as a regular bar because we're trying to make it great that way, but it's a long-term play is what it is. And so we change our menu pretty frequently. We have about 15 cocktails around the 4 spirits. And then just depending on what's fresh at the time is how we create the menu. And then we have some classics on there that will never go out, but it's all produce based, and it's a pretty fun time, especially like on a Friday and Saturday night.
Yeah, I was about to say, because we've ended up talking about cocktails at every place because I do drink that a lot, or that's kind of what I gravitate towards. And your old fashioned that you made was, probably hands down one of the best I've ever had. It was so good. So good.
Yeah.
So just like that, for instance, that's a great example. So that's our number 1 selling drink. It's our 100 proof rye, right? And we just take our rye and we proof it to 100, right? And then we do our own orange bitters. We do our own aromatic bitters. We do a raw sugar simple syrup. And we're transparent about everything we do, just because, one, I'm a huge believer in transparency. And 2, I always just say, if you want to recreate it at home, you can, but it's going to take a lot of work for you to do the exact same way, right? So that's another reason.
Because we were talking last night with, Jared and Gabe at Balcones, and those gentlemen are obviously focused on neat whiskey almost all the time.
Mm-hmm.
But even Jared was saying, like, he can remember 3 or 4 drinks that were just cocktails that were done so well that he thought it like actually made a better version of the whiskey than the whiskey by itself. Right? It was better than the sum of its parts. It seems like that's what you go for. Yeah,
because I think taste is subjective, right? Everyone gravitates towards different things, and I'm a pretty big whiskey guy, and I like my whiskey neat, and I don't like a lot of stuff in it. But I think and probably most people on here are the same way.
Yeah.
I think that's the exception, and it's not the rule, especially to the masses. Or else when I'm doing my liquor store tastings, then no one would walk in and buy Screwball peanut butter whiskey, right?
Right.
that makes me just go crazy. But then at the same time, that's out there, right? Like that. So you have to, if you have the tasting room, we like to appeal to a lot of people. And I also think that there's some trepidation or hesitancy when you get into whiskeys, especially with younger people, sometimes female as well. And so they're more apt to try bourbon in a pineapple sour or in some cool bourbon drink than they would be maybe to just start off neat that way, right?
Right.
It's a good introduction.
Well, that's one of the things we did with Sarah when she wasn't really digging it at all. Actually, tomorrow night we're going to be talking to Crowded Barrel.
Yeah.
And Daniel Whittington there suggested, well, why don't you try it with a little Topo Chico, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're going to open it up. The carbonation's just going to let those flavors open up a little bit, and you loved it.
Yeah.
And then tried it with a little Topo Chico lime, and then back to regular Topo Chico. And it just kind of gave you a sense of the neat whiskey with just a couple drops of something else to help you kind of ease into it.
Yeah, that was one of the best pieces of advice that I got, was to try that, because a lot of times, and maybe it's just like this point of where I am in my life, and I have little kids, and like you're constantly preparing.
Yep.
Like cooking is not my jam. I love to bake, but I don't love to cook. Like I'm not awesome at it, and it gets frustrating because it's not as good as I want, and I don't have the patience, and yada, yada, yada. So like, I never make myself a cocktail because I'm always like, that's just too much trouble. So then I just wouldn't do anything. But like,
I make her lots of cocktails.
Yes, that's great. But when you're not home. So being able to add something like Topo Chico, and then I can have a drink when I'm not, like, if it's a hot summer day or I'm just not feeling something neat. That was really phenomenal. I talked last night about how I love to mix with Waterloo sparkling waters, because that kind of gives you a little bit of that cocktail feeling without adding all the sugar, and it's easy because it's just 2 ingredients. So it's pretty awesome. But yeah, I think the cocktail thing is huge for folks, because I talk to so many of my friends who are not into whiskey at all, and they're just not even, a lot of folks aren't interested in trying just because they're like, I don't know if I want something so intense. And culturally, whiskey and scotch has always been kind of, you know, in the men's business room club somewhere, right? Kind of back to that Mad Men thing a little bit, you know? So, but it's changing.
Cigar filled.
It's a lot.
3-piece suits.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about, because if you were watching the video just a second ago, you saw you describing the stills, I think, to a tour. And you guys have pretty unique stills, at least for Texas. So what do you guys use that is different from the stills of most of the rest of the state?
Yeah, so we use iStills, which some people know about, some people don't. They're from the Netherlands, and they're fully automated. It's pretty state-of-the-art equipment. And what I like about them is it's essentially one column. Someone called it a hybrid column. I think that's sort of right, because it can do both a pot still and a column still run. And so that's why we're able to make all 4. And what I like about them the best, though, is just the consistency of the alcohol that comes out that way. And so we have our same recipes, we have the same programs, our heads and our tails, and our hearts. And when we make our cuts, it's to the 1,000th of a degree. So, it doesn't look, nothing about our distillery probably looks like a typical, what I would say, distillery. There's not a lot of copper around on the inside. It's stainless steel. And again, then going back to the tasting room, I think sometimes people even forget we're a distillery at the tasting room, because we've won a bunch of awards for like best cocktail lounge or wanky bar or things like that, right? Because the tasting room is sort of in front of the distillery with glass saying in the back, but a lot of people don't come because we're a distillery. They just come for the cocktails and see what we're doing in the bar, which is great. It's fine. It's just it's a different experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I love it because it's a way to introduce it to a whole different audience of folks.
Yes.
Who and that's, again, going back to
that's kind of the whole point
what
of
we
this.
love. Yeah.
Right?
And what we love about the trail being so different is that it gives an opportunity for everyone to kind of find something they like, right? Because we don't all like the same whiskeys. So why would we all like the same, travel places? So I think that's really awesome. And hopefully some of those folks will come our way.
Yeah. I was just tasting through your bourbon, which we haven't spent enough time talking about the bourbon, because I don't think that, like, it definitely doesn't have the Kentucky bourbon vibe to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're a bourbon person, you know that Kentucky thumbprint, right? Yeah. And the Tennessee thumbprint's not that far off for especially all the Tennessee bourbons that are out there, which a lot of people think is a misnomer, but it's our thing, folks. Trust us. But this one is unique. I feel like there's more herbal something to it. What would you describe it as?
So the bourbon that we sourced is a wheat heavy bourbon, and I think when you say wheat, I think creaminess in terms of how that carries over to flavor profiles in your mouth. And so it kind of reduces what typically I know as corn in most bourbons, which is the very corn forward flavor, right?
Right.
And also we use a grain called triticale, which we're using pretty much in everything, which is a rye wheat cross-pollinate. And again, I think that wheat cuts into the spiciness of the rye, and it just kind of acts as, that creaminess sort of just acts as a muter, if that makes sense. It just takes everything down a little bit. And so again, I think on the one hand, it makes it pretty easy to drink for both the bourbon and the rye in that sense. But on the other hand, again, it's not super aggressive or, wow, I've got a lot going on here. I have a lot of oak or whatever you have. I think it's all just a little bit more mild than typically you would see in some other bourbons.
What about your stuff in maturation? How is that shaping up? And kind of comparing to this? I know it's not an apples to apples kind of thing, but
it's not. And, I think that's probably, it's good. I'm excited about it and I can't wait, but it's substantially different than what we're putting out right now. And I'm pretty much, I'm happy with everything that's coming along, the rye and the bourbon, but I'm the most excited about the 100% Triticale that we're just going to call Blackland whiskey. Just because, again, I don't think a lot of people are doing it.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a different finish. It still tastes like whiskey, but you'll taste it and you go, that's whiskey, but it's unusual. I like it. I've never tasted anything like that before. And that's what I like about it the most. It's just not ready yet.
And the Triticale is that coming from Tex Malt?
Yeah.
Okay. So you work with Tex Malt a lot, don't you?
Yes, all the time. Because one, they're great guys and they do a great job, but they're also 2 miles away from my distillery. So
yeah,
nice.
and I know that they've been helping with this effort as well on the sanitizer side to provide grains. So we want to shout out to the Tex Malt guys.
Absolutely, everyone should use Tex Malt. They're incredible.
Well. Let's do a quick A/B comparison with another whiskey that's also from Fort Worth. And I also want to give a shout out to them because they deserve it for all the work that they're doing. But it's TX Bourbon. And this is the product from Firestone Robertson that is actually made. It's 100% Texas product. We've talked with Rob and them up there, and they're doing some amazing stuff right now with their stills, getting the sanitizer out to the communities. I think all of Pernod Ricard is doing it nationwide.
Yeah.
I think they put out like 1,500 gallons already. And I know the first one here in Fort Worth went to the Fort Worth Police Department and some other agencies. And now I think a lot of it's going to FEMA. So they're just giants.
Yeah.
They're huge.
Well, we thought we'd do a Fort Worth distillery comparison, kind of see what the bourbons.
See if I can tell the difference.
Yeah, see if you can tell the difference. So
should I close my eyes and you twist them or move them around?
Okay, go ahead and take this one.
Okay.
Try not to look.
Can I smell the other one? Because I feel like this is what I've been drinking.
Here we go, folks.
Uh-oh. So now you've given her, just to be clear, you've given her the TX and then you gave her our Blackland bourbon?
That is correct.
Okay.
I honestly cannot.
They're similarly proved, right?
The TX is,
and I think but they're in the same, lower 40s.
I can't really smell. I smell a slight difference, but I couldn't tell you what it is.
Okay. What about taste?
I have not done that yet.
And they're just probably about 5 or 8 miles down the road from you there as well, right?
Yeah, they have a giant 112-acre golf course facility that used to be a country club that they converted.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Ooh, she doesn't know. If you
I can definitely smell the 7%.
7% difference?
Yeah.
Or 7 proof difference?
The 7 proof, right?
I think this is the one I've been drinking tonight, and this is the TX.
No.
I was doing so good for a couple of nights. Oh man.
Well, but I think it's interesting. This is a pretty decent comparison.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can taste a slight difference, but like I said, I can't tell you what it is.
Yeah. The side by side is interesting. Now, what I kind of wonder is at least 20% of your product is coming from the bourbon that you're producing with Tex Malt.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% positive, but I know that the malt the grains that they're using at TX Bourbon is all coming from a Blackland Prairie farm. I'm pretty sure. So I I think they're single sourcing from a single farm, and for most of that. So like there is at least some element of regionality there that I think is interesting.
Well, and we've got the same temperatures here in the barrel rooms too, right?
Right.
And I haven't looked at their barrels. I'm sure they're very similar though. You know. So to your point, yes, there's got to be a lot of similarity that way.
I think that's fun too, because you can have a distillery be just down the road. I mean, like Blanco is on the trail is one of the best examples. We have 3 distilleries that are all within 3 miles of each other, and they really couldn't be any more different.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, the stuff that Milam and Green is making is wildly different from the malts that are being produced over at Real Spirits, and then you have Andalusia up the road, which has its complete unique thumbprint. But whenever I show somebody a Texas whiskey, they're almost like, oh, this is a different thing. And there is there's something very unique and different about Texas whiskeys. And what do you think it is? It's got to be maturation climate for sure, right? That's got to be the biggest element. But is there anything else that you think is contributing to that?
Well, to that point, though, I just feel like it's so hot, especially in the summers, and we've talked about this, you lose some of that sugar. And so I don't know what the answer is, but I think what you tend to get with Texas whiskeys in general, and not ours, but just in general, you get a very full, rounded, flavor forward, whatever the grain is emphasized a little bit more because of that maturation process. And then to the counter argument to that is, I wish sometimes on Texas whiskeys that the finish was a little bit better across the board, just whether that's the alcohol or the sugar or the sweetness or whatever it is, we lose something.
Right.
Someone's going to figure it out.
Well, it's refinement, right? And for an industry that's only 10 to 12 years old, you're going to figure those things out and figure out how to smooth the edges. And I think a lot of it is, getting your product out there, right?
Yeah.
The benefit of Texas is that you can mature faster, right?
Yeah.
And that age isn't, we measure things in months here. Most other places measure them in years because of the different, variability in the climate here. But there's something to the idea of seeing, I think Iron Root's a great example up in North Texas of like what they're trying to do to buy time in the barrel.
Right.
Whether it's elevage or 60-gallon barrels or something like that. I think it's a very interesting environment right now.
I like people who just try different things, right? Even if it doesn't work. Or Still Austin, I know, who's proofing during maturation a little bit. It's just all of that, because someone's going to figure it out that there's going to be a method then that everyone else uses at some point, right? Well,
and one thing that actually came through today, I think James Botek might have referenced it earlier, but the TTB came out and said that I don't know if you remember this from last year, but there was a proposal to make the definition of a barrel a 50-gallon cylindrical drum thing. And we obviously, as an association, came in and opposed that because we need the ability to do lots of different things. And when I visited your distillery, one of the things you were testing out was the square barrels, the squirrels, right? And it was just I don't know how deeply you got into it, but like different barrel sizes, different barrel shapes, working with 60-gallon barrels, doing different things. I like to see that kind of innovation. And that's one of the reasons that we opposed it. And thankfully they agreed. So what's your opinion on maturation differences?
Yeah, I mean, I'm open to all of it. I'm not a traditionalist in that sense because, we've been making it the same way for so long, which is great. Everyone's been making great whiskey for a long time, but I'm also all for pushing the limit. And we have a saying at the distillery where you have to make a lot of bad alcohol before you can make good alcohol. It's not like you can just turn it on, and you've got to try and figure things out. Like the squirrels, for instance, were good for us to taste the grain, but I've kind of decided I would never put those into production for long term because there's too much wood on it. Okay, great. So we learned something on that, right?
Yeah.
So we can eliminate that, and we can eliminate why the smaller barrels or things like the squirrel might not be effective for us for long term. But did we take something away from that, and how can we apply that for the next thing we try? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think you did a pretty darn good job. Still, you're still batting, over 500 pretty well.
Yeah.
So
I had a 2-night streak.
Yeah, you did. For those of you on the comments, if you have questions for Markus, please add them in now.
Yeah.
There's a couple comments here that I wanted to address. Trey says FNR has a beautiful campus. They do. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
Would be great if they became a member of the trail. We agree, Trey. We're constantly talking to them and very impressed by the way they've stepped up, especially during this crisis, and they deserve your support as well.
Mm-hmm.
So. And then Stephen Crawford says the way Texas Distillery stepped up is really inspiring. We think so. We hope so. Like I said, it wasn't a part of our plan 2.5 weeks ago, but it became all encompassing. And Markus, I bet you can speak to that as well.
Yeah, but I would also I think this is a good time to say a thank you to both of you guys, because the emails and the constant information and keeping everyone up to date has been fantastic. If I ever have some sort of question or concern or issue about what's the rule now, or what's my concern with hand sanitizer, or what is the FDA doing, I have a whole folder just from you guys, from all of the emails that I get, and I could just go and reference it back, which is, by the way, just a bigger picture thought on what is the point of the association and how it supports its members, right? And this is really sort of the point. It's easy to do it in the good times. I think it's when things like this happen or legislation passes that can affect the distillery directly, when an association is important. And I appreciate everything you've done the last few weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's it's one of those things where it's like, that it's possible that one of these crisis moments is going to come up, but
Right.
You hope not, especially in the first year of the trail. I mean, I don't think anybody would, it doesn't sound like a good business plan to start a whiskey trail if you know that 2 out of your first 12 months are going to be shelter-in-place orders.
Yeah.
It's not great for you guys as distillery owners either.
Yeah. No, but one of the things I think you and I have loved so much over the last 2 years, and I think is so cool, is seeing how much everyone in the association and on the trail collaborates together.
Yeah, that has been amazing.
I mean, I shouldn't be giving out this trade secret, because now y'all will know and you'll come even later, but we usually buffer in like 20, 30 minutes in the front of a meeting, because we know everyone's going to come and they're going to be talking to each other. They're going to be excited to see one another. They want to share what they've been working on. And like, it takes a while to get everyone to sit down and have a meeting, which I get. Like,
everybody wants to share their bottles.
Yeah, but it's really, really cool. And I think that's something that's a little bit unique.
Yeah.
Add that to the list of things that are unique to the Texas whiskey.
Yeah, and even tomorrow night when we talk about Crowded Barrel, we're going to be talking about the first ever blends of certified Texas whiskeys.
Yeah.
Which wasn't a thing until 2 years ago at
Right.
the first Texas or the second Texas Whiskey Festival.
Yeah.
So
It's cool to see us coming together.
Yeah, if we do have an industry, which I think we do now, it's going to be nice to see everybody work together, compete hard. When I first put this together, I think what I said was, I see it kind of like the NFL. Like sometimes, the Eagles are never going to love the Cowboys, but they all play in the same league, right? And if we can get everybody playing in the same league, then Texas whiskey is going to be a pretty huge thing.
Yeah, I would just say also, like on a personal note, of all the distilleries I don't like, most of them don't make whiskey.
I understand that.
I'll just leave it at that.
Well, it's really interesting, because I mentioned a couple of nights ago that I'm a pastor's kid.
Yeah.
And I met so many pastors' kids in the last 2 years who are running distilleries. But there's really that kind of sense of community and helping each other out, that, I mean, it kind of makes sense that a lot of these folks kind of grew up in that culture and church. And
Gretchen said it perfectly, right? It's craft and community.
True. It's totally true.
Hey, I actually got a good question here for you, Markus. Steven says, given Markus's culinary background, what would you recommend as a palate cleansing plate for tasting group sharing evening?
Yeah, so I just I just keep it simple. Anything in the nut family is good for me. Like I do a lot of cashews is what I'm doing in here as I taste all of this. Or pistachios are good. Also, if you have we serve a really nice charcuterie board in the tasting room, but that's not always easy to get to. But even if you're a very basic type of bread or chip, I think is a great palate cleanser in between. Just something to mute and dull in between your drinks.
Nice.
So do you still love cooking as much now that you're spending all this time doing all of this?
Yeah, I still love to cook, but to your point though, I don't think a lot of people know this, but when you go to culinary school, there's 2 tracks. There's a savory and then there's a pastry.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And so your personality type really dictates which way you're going to go.
Yeah.
You say you like to bake a lot, right?
Pastry.
Yeah.
Right. So immediately I just wondered, so is Spencer more the type A and you're more the creative type, or is it?
No, I would say it's flipped. I'm more type A and he's more creative. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The one thing about baking is, there's a lot of precision. You have to get everything right? Or one little small step and it's done.
Yeah.
Whereas you have a little bit more flexibility on the savory side, but you have to be organized. You have to always be neat and clean and focused. And so I always was interested in, there's definitely a personality type that goes towards baking, and there's definitely in the classes that went towards the savory.
I think you like baking because there's a formula and you can follow it. And if you follow it closely, you know that you're going to get something good.
Right.
And I get bored by the formula. I feel like I have to throw in a little salt, try a little more pepper, taste throughout, understand what I'm tasting through the process in order for it to be good.
Yeah, but you're definitely not neat and tidy.
I'm not cooking.
So I don't know where that puts him.
It's just like anything, you have to practice it.
Yeah.
A clean board, in front of you and a clean mind makes a better dish. That's what they used to always say at school. And it's amazing how if you keep your station clean as you're going, how much better your end product will be. And of course, that sort of makes sense as I say it, but if you really focus on it while you're cooking, it's a great tip of just to see what you end up with.
I like that tip.
Yeah. You know what?
I usually do the cleaning after he cooks, so that would be great.
I will admit that, I've never been really great at that, obviously. But one thing that I have gotten better at, and this whole COVID thing has kind of forced it, is make sure that you're not cross-contaminating, right? Yeah. And we did that with our groceries to make sure that the groceries are kind of going to be wiped down. I know that may not be a full-on recommendation anymore, but why not be safe than sorry? Have a clean area, a dirty area, and then sanitize everything. So I think all of us now are putting a little more thought into what you're putting into your body and how you're preparing things.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see after this in a few months if the habits carry over and what people's daily lives are like in a different way with using hand sanitizer all the time, because I was not a big hand sanitizer. I'm still really not. I just wash my hands a lot. But to me, just observing making hand sanitizer, it's like water to them. They just carry it around everywhere and they use it all the time, right?
Yep.
I'm fascinated to see what that's going to be like after all of this.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be different. And I was talking earlier today about going to the grocery store and how people don't want to look at you, right? They're just not making eye contact. They're keeping their distance, and everybody's kind of afraid of each other. But it would be nice once all this is said and done for that to kind of shed away, but keeping the cleanliness practices that everybody's learning right now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see.
I do think people are going to be very eager to
get
together again, hang out. I was thinking earlier today, I was really looking forward to this tonight because it gives you a chance to kind of feel like you're with other people. And, and I hope to see us take advantage of the fact that we've had to slow down in a lot of areas of life. And then as we slowly build back up, be more intentional about hanging out and going to great cocktail lounges.
Well, let's do that transition right into a plug. So Markus, when things open back up and when you guys get going, what's your tour schedules? What's your cocktail lounge going to be like? And when all this is said and done, what do you want people to do to come see you guys?
Yeah, so we were pretty busy we only open Wednesday through Saturday. The cocktail lounge opens from like 4 to midnight, and then on Saturdays we open from 2 to midnight. So we had a pretty good crowd before all of this, and in our tours, we just did once at 2:15 on Saturdays. That we were just doing that, and then right before this hit, we were getting pretty full. Like I cap it at 25. Just for me, that's for the size we are. It's too much. So we were hitting that pretty steadily and booking out far. So I may add a second tour on Saturdays, just depending on how things go. But Saturday is definitely the day to come up if you're from out of town. We get a lot of DFW people or Waco or even for Austin. People have come up for that. But also, if you're a member of the trail and you're in town or something like that, or you're around and it's not Saturday, we're small enough. You can just email me and I'll show you around the distillery and you can see the tasting room.
Yeah,
awesome.
And while we're in this period of time and you are producing sanitizer, you guys were doing some curbside pickups and things, and people could still do bottle purchases at the distillery, correct?
Yeah, and that had really honestly has been great for us in that we were doing little 8-ounce bottles, and then we were also selling our bottles. And I think I was looking at the numbers today. Just from that alone, we sold more bottles out of the distillery in March than any month we've ever had, just from selling hand sanitizer.
That is so. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yeah,
I can't say. Yeah,
but it was good. It was great, and it kept the lights on because we lost all of the revenue from the tasting room that way. But at least we got the bottle sales, and then distribution has been fine because the liquor store sales, I'm sure you've talked to other people, have been. It's like December right now for people who are going to hoard and go up into their house and then take groceries, and they have to make sure they have their alcohol, which I totally understand. Mm-hmm. So that pretty much saved us.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, that is so awesome. Looks like there's one more question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, is thanking us. Thank you, Sarah Spencer, for that. I appreciate that.
Did you do that on purpose?
No, I didn't actually. I thought it was a question for us. So, but Kathy, thank you for watching. We're going to do this, I guess, probably five times per week.
Yeah.
Wow.
For every weeknight for the next 4 weeks, basically. And so it'll be a marathon, and we're might run out of things to say. So if you are watching right now, please continue to join, invite your friends to join, ask lots of questions, engage with these distillers directly, and go patronize them. Go give them the credit that they deserve right now.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for having me on tonight. I really appreciate it. I'll tune in for sure tomorrow.
Thank you, Markus. Take care. Appreciate you.
See you soon in person.
All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for everything. I'm going to finish. I've played it twice already, but I'm going to finish one last time on this last video.
I really want to go to DFW now.
It makes me want to go take that. Makes me want to go take that trip. But let's say goodbye on this, and we'll see you tomorrow night with Crowded Barrel. Right?
Woot woot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Take care.